Shawn of Back to Basics Fitness with Shawn here. Um, Excited to talk about what I'm talking about today. So I've been talking about making fat loss easy in 2026. So I am elaborating on that topic today to talk specifically about 6 very common fat loss myths. One of the things to really understand about fitness, fat loss, health, and all those related topics is this: that it has to start in your mind first. It has to start in your mind. If you found yourself struggling to lose weight for weeks, months, years, even decades, you have to understand first and foremost that it's the body follows the mind. So it's very, very likely something that you believe or something that you understand a certain way about losing weight, about losing fat, that is not quite the way that you think it is. Okay. And I'm telling you, it's a lot more common than we realize because of the fact that, for example, the way that we learn about stuff like what our society puts out there about fat loss and all these type of things is not always accurate. It's not always correct. Now, sometimes it's just because the science is updated, people understood more about what the body was, how the body works, how food works in the body and stuff like that, how exercise works with the body. So sometimes it's just related to like science, people's learning and understanding of the body kind of being enhanced. Okay. Um, you know, so other times it could be something a little bit more like not cool, like maybe certain people get funded, certain kind of industries getting funded to say that such and such is good for you when it's not, or so there's some of that too. But the main thing is we have to make sure we have the right kind of understanding, the right kind of knowledge to make sure that we're losing fat, um first of all, successfully, but most importantly, healthily. Okay. So we're gonna get into this. I don't have any slides here today, but I'm gonna post some things here in the chat as I kind of point out the different fat loss myths. All right. So fat loss myth number one is this here. Fat loss myth number one is that you get fat from eating fat. Now, if you're my age or older than me, so I have recently entered into my 40s, then you grew up in a time where fat loss, I mean not fat loss, but fat, dietary fat, was very maligned, very considered, fattening, considered, you gotta avoid fat at all costs in your diet. Now, thankfully, here over the past probably 20 years, an increase in knowledge has helped people to understand. Let me clarify this. Hold on. Yeah, that is myth number one. I want to make sure that it's clear that that's a myth, that you get fat from eating fat. Okay. But the science has kind of caught up, and people now understand that it's not really that. It's not so simple as you eat fat, therefore you get fat. Here's the deal. There are three main types of macronutrients that we take in: proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, all of which have different properties and somewhat different functions in the body. Okay, certain foods you eat are higher in protein, certain foods you eat are higher in carbs, certain foods you eat are higher in fats, and a lot of foods have some mixture of two or three of those. Now, people used to think that you got fat because, like, for example, maybe um you eat like a steak and it has a lot of marbling, and therefore you get fat from eating that fat. Like the fat, like literally comes out of that and comes into your fat. So that's not necessarily true. The main reason why people get um overweight from their diets is typically carbohydrates. Typically. Now, speaking more generally, When you consume more energy than your body requires, then your body will tend to store that as extra, that excess as fat. It'll also store some in like your liver and stuff like that. But we typically become overweight from eating too many carbohydrates. Okay. We eat more carbohydrates than our activity levels really, that makes sense than what makes sense for our activity levels. Okay. And the reason why it's easy to do this is because, in short, I'm sorry, processed carbohydrates, processed foods tend to be very high in carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates that immediately put you in a state of having way too much energy intake. Okay. And so they spike your insulin and put you in fat gain mode, and then you gain, you know, fat because you've taken in way too much energy through those ultra processed foods. Now, it is true that dietary fat that you consume in your diet, can be stored in body fat. However, whenever you consume a food that has fat in it, it tends to help you to feel fuller quicker. It tends to trigger your satiety hormones, the hormones that make you feel full, more quickly. Whereas foods that are like high in carbohydrates, especially the processed ones, you don't tend to get full as quickly on those. Not only that, but a lot of times those foods are literally addictive. The sugar and stuff in these foods is addictive, and so therefore it makes you, more likely to overeat carbohydrates. Okay, so it is a myth that you get fat from eating fat. Typically, it's harder to eat a whole lot of fat to the point that you would actually, overeat that food. Now, before I leave this point, though, I will say that it's important to note that there are fats that we consume that are, quote, healthy fats, and then there are fats that we consume that are typically not healthy. So, like, you don't want to do a whole lot of deep fried foods. You don't want to do foods that have trans fats, which, by the way, if it's a processed food like a pastry or maybe potato chips or something like that, there's a good chance, even if they say there are no trans fats, there's a good chance that they are in there because, I think it's a FDA definitions say that if you have like less than half a gram of trans fat in your product, you can label that on your food label as 0 grams of trans fat. So it's not actually true. It's just meeting the FDA definition. Okay. So keep that in mind. There are healthy fats. There are fats that aren't healthy, like hydrogenated oils, that you do want to avoid. All right. Myth number two. And I'm going to type this in, then talk about it. Myth number two is this: that fat loss is impossible for some people aside from an intervention of some kind. Okay. So, in other words, that some people are just not going to be able to lose the weight. And therefore, they have to, like, they literally have to get, like, take a drug or get, surgeries or different things like that. Now, let me say this: if you choose to do that, that's you. That's you have the freedom to make those kind of choices. The point I'm making here is that it's a myth that some people can only lose weight that way. Okay. Now, my background is engineering, and, um, when I was, pursuing an engineering degree, we had to take a couple of physics classes. And one of the things you learn about in physics is energy, potential energy, kinetic energy, different things like that. There's a law of physics called the law of conservation of energy. And I wanted to read some of that so you can kind of, maybe get a different understanding of fat, because of the fact that fat in and of itself is literally stored energy. So the law of conservation of energy in part says that the total amount of energy in a system can only be changed by energy entering or leaving the system. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can be changed from one form to another. Now, like I said, all fat is energy. Fat is literally stored energy that your body, in its amazing architecture, that your body essentially determined that it was excess, and it stored it for a later time when when it'll be needed. Okay. As I've said in previous webinars, a lot of times, literally, we don't use our extra storage because we're always storing. We're always in fat storage mode, fat gain mode, always, because the way that we eat keeps our insulin high, and therefore, when your insulin is high, then you keep on bringing in fat into your fat tissue. Okay, now, and I get it, especially if you've been unsuccessful at losing fat. But hear me when I say this: uh, it's your body has to be able to get rid of that fat. It has to be able to access it. It has to be able to use it. It's just the way that the body works. It's the way that the human body works. Okay, so even if it feels tough, like, man, I have a lot of weight to lose, or no matter what I do, I can't seem to lose the fat. Your body cannot defy the laws of physics and stuff like that. It can't. Literally, if you were to meet the qualification, so to speak, not the qualification, you know what I mean? Like, if you were to have the right conditions, your body will access that fat. Because remember, think about this: your body stores that up, so it is somewhat protective of it. As long as you bringing in enough energy, then your body's just going to keep that away for storage. But whenever your body detects, okay, we need this energy now, then your body's going to use the fat. Okay, period. So I talked about hibernating animals a couple of webinars ago. Like, we know that bears, for example, hibernate, and so they literally will stuff themselves, get all kind of food in them, just really, really eat a whole lot, and then they go and hibernate for whatever period of time, during which they're not eating anything. Their body is literally sustaining them off of their fat reserves. Okay. So that bear can survive for a long time off of that fat. Now, I also mentioned this guy heard in the podcast, Dr. Martin Picard. He said most people can survive a month on their fat reserves. Your fat reserves serve pretty much the same purpose that the fat reserves that of a bear serve. Okay, for a time whenever you need them. So if you actually, so for example, and please understand what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting that you starve yourself or anything like that. But for example, say that you went on a 3-day fast. When you come out of that fast, you would be lighter, and a lot of that would be fat. A lot of it would be, there'll be some water weight loss, which usually happens, in the first several hours, the first day or so. But you will also lose a pretty significant amount of fat. Why? Because your body needed the energy for whatever kind of regular processes. It needed to get it from somewhere. Your body determined, oh, we're not getting this from food now, so we're going to deplete whatever glycogen we have in the muscles and all this kind of stuff. Okay, now we're out of that. So now we need to go and oxidize fat cells. We need to get fatty acids from those and then use those to create energy for the body. What use those for energy, okay? That the body can use to do stuff, whether it be like moving around like I am, or heartbeat, lungs, breathing, different type of stuff like that. Um, Fat is energy that can be changed and used by the body under the right conditions. Period. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you deal with. Fat is just energy. It's just that. Now, there are conditions that might make it a little bit more tough to lose fat, like hormonal issues or like hypothyroidism or I mentioned PCOS for ladies, a couple of other things out there. But at the same time, remember fat is energy. You have to give your body a reason to use to store energy rather than staying in fat game mode. All right. So enough on that. Myth number 3. Uh-oh. Number 3 is this. Uh-oh. Sorry. Spot reduction. It's one of the oldest myths in the book. One of the oldest ones. Basically, that, a lot of people, for example, are wanting to lose weight right here in the midsection, the abdominal region. They want to lose weight right there. And it seems like that's always the last place for it to go. And it's true. It does. It's often last to really leave, at least the way we want it to, from the midsection. But a lot of people have this idea, and it's been fed from like sources that aren't necessarily the best, that if you do a whole lot of crunches, if you do a whole lot of abdominal exercises and stuff like that, or if you slap your stomach or, just different stuff, that's gonna like make the fat come off. Like if you do activity in a particular region, if you do arm curls and if you do tricep extensions, then it's gonna burn the fat off of your arms and make your arms less jiggly. That's not the way it works. Fat is just all fat is places around the body that your body would use to store excess energy. So you have fat storage here, you got fat storage here in your back and your chest and your abdomen, legs. A lot of the way that you place fat around your body is dependent on like your genetics and stuff like that. So it just is what it is. Okay. Now, you doing different kind of activity is not going to make it be lost from those particular areas in any sort of noticeable way. I've heard somebody suggest that there's like some very very negligible amount of stuff like that, but it's just count this out. You can't spot reduce. If you want to lose fat in your abdomen, you just need to make sure that you are using more energy than you take in, and eventually it's going to come off. Now, it may take a while, and it may also depend on how much weight you have to lose and how close you are to getting to, um, I'll say like a somewhat normal weight. It may slow down a bit where you kind of have to tweak some things a bit more, but you can't spot reduce. You can't. You just need to lift weights. You need to do just some general cardio, ideally high intensity, interval training or something like that. You just be generally active and eventually it'll come off of there. Make sure your diet is proper. All right. So that's myth number 3. All right. Sorry about that. My kids upstairs making a lot of noise. All right. So myth number 4 is this. To lose fat, you need to do a whole lot of cardio, specifically steady state cardio. And when you talk about steady state, that's stuff like jogging for a long period of time, jogging many miles, or even like very very long aerobics classes that aren't very intense. They just kind of like last a long time. Now, don't get me wrong. Steady state cardio, like cardio that you're doing for 20, 30 plus minutes, is going to help you to lose fat. It is. The thing about it though is that the nature of low intensity, long duration cardio, I say with the exception of walking, I explain a little later. The nature of it is that it uses your body in such a way that your body is also going to get rid of muscle too. Because our bodies are like masters of efficiency. So your body, it's like your body's always watching, always listening, kind of see what you do with it. And so when you start to do something consistent, then your body's like, okay, we're seeing this a lot. So we're going to need to adjust to make ourselves better at this. So if you become a jogger, and I've been one to jog a lot in my life, not as much in recent years, um, but a decent amount in the past. But if you're a jogger, your body will be like, okay, we need to become more efficient at this. So we need to drop weight. And so this is not just fat that you're going to lose. You're going to lose a decent amount of fat, but you're going to lose muscle too because your muscles aren't really being stimulated in a way that encourages your body to hold on to them. So because when you're jogging, if you're jogging and you're kind of heavier, it's going to take more energy. Then your body is going to also kind of get rid of some of that heavy muscle as well. That's why I say you might want to do more of higher intensity cardio, such as I love hill sprints. You can do hill sprints or just regular sprints intermittently on the track, or at least kind of, like go high. You may not go all out sprint, but you go hard, then you rest. Maybe go a minute hard and then you rest for about a minute and go hard for a minute, rest a minute. It also makes it more fun, to be honest. But my point is, you don't just want to do a whole lot of long cardio because you're going to lose weight all over and you're probably not going to really you're going to become a smaller version of your current self, which you may not really want. What you really want is to sculpt. That means you're some people talk about recomp and body recomposition. But basically, you are losing fat, preserving, if not gaining muscle, and that produces a sculpting effect. That a lot of people realize once they start to do that, that's what they wanted all along. You don't just want to lose weight. That's why I always talk about fat loss more than I talk about weight loss, because the weight we typically want to lose is fat weight. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, good. So here's the next myth. Myth number 5 is that you can eat whatever you want and still lose fat. Now, a lot of people promise this, but this is a myth. Now, let me kind of like give some cream filling, so to speak. Let me get some more details. So, if you were aware during the 2008 Olympics, you probably heard of Michael Phelps, the highly decorated swimmer who won a record number of gold medals. I mean, he was getting it. He was an amazing swimmer. Now, one of the things that came out during and after the Olympics is that he was eating a 15,000 calorie per day diet, 15,000 calories a day approximately. So, I mean, eating and some of the food, the quality of food that he ate was good. A lot of the quality of food he was eating was pretty bad. But the thing was, the dude was actually swimming for like 6 hours a day practice. 6 hours a day. Now, swimming is already in and of itself one of the most intense things you can do because it's truly a full body exercise. Let alone doing that for 6 hours a day. So people like him can get away with, you know, eating a lot of junk and probably still lose weight or really have to fight to maintain the weight like he did because of the fact that they exercise so much. Now, again, swimming is also somewhat of a strength training type of deal, at least in the sense because having to propel yourself through the water and stuff like that. So he's able to really keep a very decent musculature and just kind of have a high energy output. So he needed a lot of calories just to kind of maintain his weight. Most of us we don't really have the ability to lose or to exercise a whole lot and lose fat because we had to, we have jobs. We got 9 to 5s or whatever, and we don't really have time to be exercising like 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Okay. And just the nature of our society, it doesn't really allow for us to our society doesn't really allow us to be active like that unless you were to move way into the country and have a farm and all this kind of stuff. You're just not going to be very active. You're not going to be very active. It's like we live further away from everything, or even if we live kind of close, a lot of times it may be not as safe to, you if you live in a place like I do, it's somewhat walkable, but not totally. So, um, you have to change something. You can't just eat whatever you want. You either have to change the type of food that you're eating, like change it from junk food to healthier whole food, or you need to change the amount of food that you're eating, or both to actually lose fat. There's a dude that lost a lot of weight, well, a decent amount of weight on a Twinkie diet, but if he were to eat a whole lot of Twinkies, he wouldn't have lost the weight. He literally he just kind of like counted the calories and demonstrated that you could still lose weight eating Twinkies. Now, granted, think about this though. We're not just trying to lose weight. We're not just trying to lose weight off of any diet because your body has needs. So you can't just eat whatever and expect to be healthy because what kind of vitamins and minerals are in Twinkies? Even if they added them in there, they're probably not very bioavailable, probably not really worth anything. But so anyway, if you're eating, I'll say this, if you're eating junk food, you could lose weight, but you're probably gonna have to lose. You can't really be eating a whole lot of anything though. Just a handful of potato chips, 3 meals a day, or something like that, 3 times a day. You lose weight just by virtue of the fact that you're not really eating a lot. How do you survive off of that though? It's not reasonable. That's why I say it's not just fat loss that we want. We want health. So we want to lose fat the healthy way, a healthy, sustainable way where we're helping our bodies to function the way they were always designed to function. So keep that in mind. We're not just after fat loss; we're after healthy fat loss. We get to the weight that we want to get to, and then we move on with our life. All right. Last myth I want to talk about today. Myth number 6 is this. Let me copy it. Next time I do this particular webinar, I'll make sure I have slides. So this last myth I want to talk about is that foods burn fat. Now, I know that some people might, you know, counter me on this or be like, no, that's not true. But let me explain. First, by asking the question. If these different foods that they talk about in, articles and TikToks and Instagram shorts and all that stuff, if these foods really did burn fat, why doesn't it work for more people? Why doesn't it really work? Why are we still going after like different weight loss drugs and stuff like that? Why doesn't it work? So one of the foods or substances rather that I've heard people talk a lot about burning fat is green tea. It has something in it called, I think, EGCG. It's a particular type of compound that has various benefits for the human body. Among them, it can supposedly help the body burn more fat. But my question is, how much green tea do you have to drink to burn any appreciable amount of fat from drinking green tea? So before I did this live today, I looked up how much of this compound, this EGCG, is in a cup of green tea. A cup is 8 ounces. So I think I saw like 30 to it's different. Different people said different things, but 30 to 50, I think, milligrams, I want to say, of EGCG in green tea that can produce some weight loss effect. Now, I don't even really know what kind of weight loss effect is kind of very vaguely put. But that said, if one cup has, so we'll go with 50 milligrams of EGCG that burns some level of fat. I also saw that a fat burning effect was associated with a consumption of EGCG that was between 100 and 400 milligrams a day, which means it would be anywhere from 2 to 8 cups of green tea a day, if I'm thinking about that right. Now, again, whatever the actual effect on weight loss is, I don't really even know. I highly doubt that it's just pounds and pounds of weight. Um, but you're gonna probably have to drink a ton of cups of green tea for there to be any effect whatsoever. You know, people say nuts help you lose fat, yogurt, apple cider vinegar, coffee, salmon. Now, a lot of these things I've mentioned are actually pretty good for you, but you don't want to consume these for the purpose of fat loss because the effects on your metabolism are likely minimal because there's a lot more to these foods and these compounds than like whatever kind of metabolic effect they have a lot of other health benefits too. But if this stuff really worked to burn fat the way that people be wanting to burn fat when they consume them, then a lot of people would lose a lot of fat drinking green tea or drinking apple cider vinegar or whatever. I'm not saying don't consume those. Matter of fact, after I finish this, I'm gonna go get me some green tea, but I'm not drinking it to lose fat. I'm drinking it because it's a highly nutritious beverage that fills the body with polyphenols and other kind of good um, substances for overall health. Those fat loss effects might be present, but they're essentially negligible unless you consume them in unreasonable amounts. Just getting a food because somebody said it burns fat, you don't want to do that. A diet that burns fat is a diet that's going to be lower in energy. And then couple that with it being a whole food that's high in nutrients. Okay. That's going to be healthy for you. So it's probably going to be a little low in carbohydrates. It's not going to have a lot of snacking. It's not going to have a lot of late eating. It's not going to be anything like that. It's going to be very high in non-starchy vegetables. It's going to have some, various food groups in there, but it's going to be based on whole food. It's not going to have stuff like sweet drinks and stuff in there either. Okay. Now, these that I've mentioned here are some of the most common myths that keep a lot of people from losing fat. And the reason why I keep on talking about this is because it's literally the end of the year. We're at December 31st, 2025. So a lot of you are going to be seeking to lose weight. You're going to be seeking to lose weight, which is a great goal because weight loss in and of itself is a level up for your health. But some of you have been trying to lose weight for a long time. I don't really believe that everybody's trying to be working on losing weight for like the rest of their lives. I believe that people want to move on from that. That you want to be successful so you can move on and be, as they say, your best self. So this is why I'm attacking different kind of myths because I want you to be successful. I want you to be able to lose the weight so you can move on with your life. So I've created a challenge that I call the 30-day fat loss, a jumpstart fat loss challenge. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Let me share this real quick. Okay, here it is. But it's a 30-day jumpstart fat loss challenge. I've included into this challenge eating strategies that, as I say here, will put your body in fat loss mode. I've included video workouts that I created myself, body weight calisthenics workouts, beginner level, that can be done at home, at the gym, at the park, wherever you want to do them. I've included a very basic cardio schedule that gradually ramps up from day 1 to day 30, created in mind for beginners. I've given you everything that you need in this challenge. The only thing you have to do is do it. 30 days to jumpstart successful fat loss. So today is the last day that this will be $49. Okay. After this, it's going to jump up. Okay. So You want to get it now, you can use that QR code, or you can use a link that I'm going to put here in the chat here in a second. But this is this is this can be your year. Sorry, I'm kind of going to this link here. But this could be your year. And I hope that you believe that. I believe it for you, but you have to believe it um for it actually to be. Give me a second. You have to believe it for it to be successful for you. This year to be successful for you. So there's a challenge I just posted in the chat. Last day that is $49 before it jumps up. The last day. If you're serious, I've given you everything that you need to go ahead and jumpstart this fat loss. Everything in this challenge. If you want this to be your year, you got the workouts, you got the eating strategies, you got the cardio strategies right here. I challenge you. Invest in yourself in these 30 days. And I look forward to seeing the difference between your day 1 and your day 30. All right. So that's all I have today. Um, if you have any questions, I'll, stay on just for a few more moments. But this can be your year if you're willing to do the work to get there. And that's the whole reason that I created this challenge, so that you don't have to do the guesswork. I'm certified. I've been a certified trainer since 2015. And then I've been a fitness enthusiast for much longer than that. So these kind of things are always kind of exciting to me. And I use all my experience and whatnot to create this challenge. 30 days. It is December the 31st. It's December 31st. Are you going to invest in your health? Are you going to let this be your year? All right. So anyway, that's all I have. I'm going to also post this in the comments. But let this be your year, y'all. Let's not believe these myths and these things that we've been hearing for, you know, decades about fat loss that really just aren't true. Like, they're not supported by science. They just aren't true. Okay. And so let's level up our minds and our knowledge so that we can actually go about this stuff the right way. All right, y'all. That's all I have. And I hope y'all have a good one. Join the challenge, comment below, and have a good one.